Up that since COVID, we've been offering these programs online via Zoom. And since we moved back in person, we are working on a hybrid. Maybe some of you have joined us on Facebook or Zoom to participate in these discussions. But I'll just set up over here. You'll see, and I'll talk to a virtual audience with it here for a moment. Just bear with us, but we'll go ahead and get rolling since they know that it's starting at 10. So I'm gonna go ahead and say a quick hello. Okay,
Hello.
Greg. So, hi guys, my name is Liz Erlewine, and I am the Visual Arts Director here at Crochetry Arts Center. I work with our location here in Petoskey City. I'm so pleased that you're here with us today for Coffee at 10. I've been realizing recently that I've asked colleagues how long Crochetry Arts Center has been doing Coffee at 10, and nobody can seem to tell me, so I think it's been a really long time. Today, we are moving to Thursdays here in our Petoskey location, so Coffee at 10s are going to happen on Thursdays at 10 from now on. After today's presentation, we've got a couple weeks off, and then on September 16th, we're actually going to start a continuous run of Thursdays at 10 presentations. So if you enjoy this, I hope that you'll come and see us in person. If for any reason you can't join us in person or choose not to, we will have these presentations available on Zoom. So you can join, type in there, participate in the conversation via Zoom, or just passively watch it on Facebook. We'll watch the comments there too, but we know we don't get as much conversation going. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And I also wanted to thank our sponsors, Roast and Toast. Some of you have already found some coffee over there. They donate that coffee for these presentations. So we're very grateful to that, or to them for that. And we're also very grateful to our members. And I know we have a number of Crochetry Arts Center members here in the room today. And I just want to say a real heartfelt thank you. We are able to provide these programs because of our members and our donors. So really appreciate that. If you have any questions about membership, you can see Kate at the front desk. So with that, I think we're good online, right, Alyssa? We look good there. So hello, Zoom audience, hello, Facebook audience, and hello, those of you in person. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Greg Czarnecki as our guest speaker today. I have known Greg for a few years. I met Greg pretty quickly once I joined staff at Crochetry. He is a natural educator and extremely knowledgeable about his field of photography. Today's presentation will be really interesting for those of you who dabble in photography or take photography pretty darn seriously, or are curious about caring for your own photographs in your personal collection. So I'm really pleased that you're here, Greg. I'm going to go ahead and turn the stage over to you.
Hello, everybody. Well, it's great to be here, to kind of be breaking out of our kind of COVID slumber for 18 months, that we're starting to meet a little bit again in person. And it's going to take some time, but you know, things will get back to normal. If you want to wear a mask, you're not going to offend me. I just have trouble standing out here for an hour talking with a mask on, so I won't be wearing one. And for the people at home, I'm going to do everything I can so that you can hear the questions. And, you know, feel free to participate, you know, raise your hand, ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer whatever you have in terms of a question. This is going to be a fun program. I'm going to be talking about the spa project at Bay Harbor. We had a large order of 8 prints to create the atmosphere at the spa. I'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about the qualities of print media, different kinds of print media. And here, ignore the quality of the print. What we're basically doing today is we're talking about reflectivity and various other things, technical sorts of things. And don't let me get too technical, drag me back if I start getting too technical. But I'm going to be talking about the qualities of these different prints, but not their print quality. I'm going to be going into detail why acrylic prints are different. I'm going to talk about upsizing images and cell phone images, and I'll give you a little bit of perspective on this big project as how it went. You know, the Great Lakes have many, many moods. You know, they can be fierce, they can be silent, they can have deep solitude, they can even be kind of mystical. And I worked to share some of these moods. These were some of the pictures that I took that they chose to use. This particular morning, I'll tell you a tiny bit about them. This particular one, it was a quiet sort of morning, and in post-processing, I smoothed out the waves, added a little bit of fog, and vignetted, darkened the edges of the picture a little bit. This picture, I didn't do a lot to that. Lighten the concentric circles there. It's basically all I did with that photograph. This photograph, I smoothed out the waves, and I lightened up some of the shadow areas to bring out the structure of those rocks. This particular picture, I worked on the waves quite a bit. It was really quite calm then. And I also tried to soften that demarcation line. There were virtually no waves at that time. This one, I softened the waves a little bit here, lightened some of these whiter sections, but didn't do a whole heck of a lot to that picture. And this one, I added a little bit to the top to suit the aspect ratio for the project, put in some fog at the top, and that was about it on that photograph. Yes? No, not at all.
When you say you lighten the area, does that mean you're working on just one area of the photograph?
Yes.
Mask it or something?
Yes, yeah. The Bay Harbor Yacht Club planned a renovation in 2017. They planned it initially at $13 million, but it ended up at $14 million. Over there, they've added a health and wellness center, 2 restaurants, an area for young kids, and the spa. And this was the concept drawings of the spa. And I'll tell you about how the project unfolded. Crooked Tree gets inquiries for photographers, and they sent over the names of 4 photographers, and I was fortunate to have my pictures selected. But initially, the questions were, you know, when you're trying to sell a picture to somebody, sometimes you say it's going to be $200, $300, $400, and they kind of go, ooh. You know, this project, it became clear that they wanted more. And so they wanted pricing on large sizes in several different kinds of print materials. Okay, they wanted canvas prints, they wanted to know metal, and they wanted to know acrylic. And it became clear to me that the project designer knew what they were working with. They understood aspect ratios and had a good understanding. So the project became large print sizes and high quality acrylic prints. So this was the largest print. This is 90 inches across, not including the separations between the photographs. 48 by 36, 60 by 42, excuse me, 60 by 42, another 60 by 42, that's 60 inches this way, and 40 by 30 of that. This one became the single longest print, a 30 by 72. So why acrylic prints? I'm going to be going into why acrylic prints are different and explain them a little bit, along with talking about some of the qualities of the other different kinds of media. You know, it really has a lot to do with how a print commands a room. And there are basically 2 ways that a print will command a room. It will either be by the lighting. You know, decor lighting has become popular in art galleries and things with the halogen lights. If you put a halogen light on something, it will, you know, certainly draw the print out. But the other part is luminance, and different materials have different luminance. And it's based on the reflectivity of the material itself, excuse me. A mirror has almost perfect reflectivity. You know, it reflects light right back to you. If you notice that sometimes your pictures will look better on the back of your camera or better on the back of your cell phone because it has a 1500 to 1 reflectivity. You know, it's backlit. A backlit transparency has about 1000 to 1. A fresh movie print in a darkened theater is about 500 to 1. But the paper inkjet print, the light reflects off of it and does not reflect back very well, only has 100 to 150 to 1. Now, the newer inks are a little bit more vibrant, so they're into the area of 150 to 1. So in other words, if you're using paper prints, better illumination is important. And in photography terminology, the paper inkjet print has about 8 stops of dynamic range. So it doesn't have a lot of pizzazz to it. And there are various print materials that increase reflectivity. The traditional silver halide print, a film print, and I'll be talking about those in a little bit. Metal prints on aluminum, metallic inkjet paper, and a quality face-mounted acrylic. Why don't I go through, let's go through and I'll talk a little bit about these prints. Liz, yes.
Go through those, which ones have the best reflectivity,
Well,
silver print, and the.
well, I'm going to be talking about them here in person, about
Okay.
these. So this is a traditional film print. This is by Howard Bond. This is not my work. Howard Bond did some judging here, and it has some good things going for it. It has silver. It's silver salts. So the silver is reflective. It's also printed into the emulsion. It's printed into the paper. So it has a little bit of a better sense of depth to the photograph. But one of the minor problems that it has is as soon as you put a glass on the front, the diffusion of the glass removes some of the reflectivity. So consequently, a lot of lighting is important. And I'll give you an example of this. Ansel Adams printed his prints with very vibrant blacks. And if you had a chance to see the Ansel Adams exhibit here, it was beautifully lit. I saw an Ansel Adams exhibit down at the Detroit Institute of Arts, and the conservator conserved light, and it looked terrible because they're all just dark and dingy. So lighting is a very important part of a good presentation. Does anybody have any insights on the traditional silver halide print? Nothing to add? Art conservators, museums like silver halide prints because they store well. You know, they lay flat. They don't deteriorate if they're mounted on good archival materials. Let's go over to the canvas over here. The canvas has the, well, it has a couple of good things going for it. Normally, a print will be done at 300 dots per inch. Well, you can get away with 150 dots per inch on canvas. So that's a good feature of it. But it's does not have much, yes? That means it's a good choice for cell phones. is what it, canvas out works out very well because it does not require, it does not show up the same kind of detail that you would get in the inkjet print that I'll be talking about. Yes.
And our virtual audience came to the questions from the audience. I think
Yes.
the question is people wanted to hear a little bit more about what is the distinction between those dots per inch, the points per inch.
How can I describe that? It's a challenge to describe that. If you did this sort of print in 150 dots per inch, it would not look very good. You would be able to see the little pixels in it. It would not look very good. But here with this, you can get away with that because of the texture of the canvas itself. Yes.
So would that mean that at 150 dots per inch, you might be able to blow it up a larger size image and still get away with it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is, the cost on this is probably next to the paper print, this is probably the least expensive print to get done. Let's see, I had one other point I wanted to make about this and I've forgotten it. Oh, it also lends itself to textures very well. If you have an image that has lots of textures, because the paper itself is textured, it shows up very well. Yes?
I mean, I thought I read that if you have noise, a lot of noise in a particular photograph, it would work better.
It works very well. You're absolutely correct. Was if you have a lot of noise in your photograph, would it work well with canvas? And it certainly will. This material works very well. Okay, let me go over to the aluminum print. And the aluminum print has a little bit of controversy with it, and I'll explain it to you. It tends to be very flat. So when you use an image with aluminum print, you want a photograph that has lots of depth to it. Okay, because it's printed on the very surface of the material. It's easily damaged. You know, it has metal edges. If it gets dinged, it's damages easy. But it has a nice, very modern look to it. So the interesting thing about printing on aluminum, it's done by means of a transfer paper. They put ink on a transfer paper and then put it into a heat press. And that's how the colors arrive on the aluminum. And it's very sensitive to humidity. So when they first started out doing aluminum prints, they tended to over ink the transfer paper. And that has become a quality of aluminum prints, that they tend to be very vibrant because initially they started over inking them. So they tend to have, in some cases, exaggerated colors. This one has a matte finish. Usually it's done with a glossy finish. So, but it's become a popular choice, particularly up here in northern Michigan. A lot of photographers like to print in aluminum. Yes?
What I found is brushed. Have you seen brushed aluminum?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
My son was teaching in Shanghai. He sent me a photo picture of the skyline in Shanghai. And as a gift, I brushed aluminum. And brushed part of it. It's just exquisite. Just suited perfect. Yeah. Velocity of it.
Yeah.
And it was still brushed
Who
aluminum.
did you have it printed by?
No, I can't.
Oh, that's all right.
It's been a few years.
This young lady had a print made on brushed aluminum, and it came out very, very well. And she was very happy with it. It suited it well. Okay, this is the standard inkjet print. Does not have a lot of luminosity. A nice 8-point matte. By the way, anytime you put a print in a nice thick matte, it makes it art. So something to keep in mind. It gives it just a beautiful extra touch. Needs lots of light. The new inks that are in the inkjet printers are really quite amazing. So I don't know much what else to say about that. I'm going to start passing around some things. I'm going to get into talking about the acrylic here a little bit farther down. So here's a cell phone enlargement. I'm going to pass this around and we're going to talk about this a little bit farther down the road. This was done on a tripod in my own little testing studio of books in our library. And it's about as good as you can get, I think, in terms of sharpness. So I'll pass that around. And I want to pass around this. This is not a high quality acrylic print. And I want you to see one that is not super high quality to begin to know what the difference is. Oh, by the way, do you have any questions so far? Yes.
As far as cost goes, the aluminum is quite a bit more expensive.
Not terribly. It's a little bit more expensive than the canvas.
shipping becomes a problem.
Has to be protected. And shipping is expensive on the acrylic also, because it becomes expensive. Why acrylic prints again? These are the two most expensive photographs ever sold, and they're both acrylic. And I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Andreas Gursky, ever since he started his career in the late 80s, wanted to print very big, and he's always printed very big. And he doesn't like his work framed at all. He likes to spill right into the room. Peter Lick has 13 galleries in the United States and around the world. His larger sizes tend to be 40 by 50 or so, but he puts his pictures into very, very wide, dark Italian frames, Roma frames. They're 4 to 6 inches, the frames. This becomes important as I start talking a little bit later on down the line. This one sold in a private sale for $6.5 million. It was actually a $10 million sale because he sold 2 other pictures at the same time that were less expensive than this one. So these were both high quality acrylics. And this is what an acrylic looks like, a side view. First of all, there's the optical grade glass, the acrylic on the front, optically pure, high quality gel, and the fine art print. The technical name for this mounting is dissect mounting. Okay, then you have the backing that's on there and the hanging system. And the hanging system becomes quite important because it adds 60% to the cost. So between Andreas Gursky and Peter Lick might be, I'm not sure, saving some money by putting his acrylic photographs into these large frames, because putting that hanging system on the back is really quite an involved process. This is labor intensive, all those different layers. So consequently, it becomes more expensive. Yes.
When you were talking about the silver headlight printing,
Yes.
you mentioned that the glass takes away some of the
Yes.
reflectivity.
Yes.
That doesn't happen with the acrylic?
No, and I'll be talking about that, the high quality acrylic. High quality face mount acrylic has excellent sharpness and a sense of depth to it. If you notice, this has a bit of a feeling of depth, that photograph. In proper lighting, they tend to glow a bit like backlit transparencies. And I want to say a couple things about printing labs. All acrylic prints are not alike. So when you go to a website and look at their things that they talk about being UV protected, that you can put it out in the sun, these prints, or that they're scratch resistant. Take all that with a grain of salt, because all prints, if you drag them across anything, will scratch. If you put a print outside, the weather is going to attack it. If you put a print in the sun, it's going to fade. So kind of take, when you go to a lab website, kind of take what they say with a bit of a grain of salt. And if you get involved with acrylic prints, some of them advertise inkjet prints. You tend to want to stay away from inkjet prints with acrylic for months afterwards. So they use glycol in the inks. Well, I'm getting tired. Anyway, the inks have to dry. So it takes quite a bit of time to do that. I'm not blocking you. Oh, okay, yes.
Well, how would you rank in terms of how much gonna last? I know the inkjets, okay, safe to fade rather quickly, a matter of 5 to 10 years.
I don't-
know where it is.
Yeah, I don't know if,
Anybody established the years on traditional black and white? It has a lot to do with the paper that's printed on. Your inkjets, they're now saying 100 to 120 years, provided you don't put them in the sun. Canvas, this is with the same kind of inks. So it would have to do with the backing of the canvas. I don't know if that, if they have archival backing on the canvas, but you're into that 100 to 120 years. This particular acrylic done by Nevada Art Printers, they say is 120 years. But, these are these claims again. I'm not going to live to be 120 years old. So I can't answer that. How long they're going to last. The question was, how long do these prints last? That's what I was answering. Now, if you, yes.
Greg, you're talking about different printing techniques. How do you find a good printing?
That's what I'm going to be going into a little bit here. And with the acrylic, as you go through labs, if you get involved with acrylic, you want to look for where they're talking about true view or true life acrylic. True view is a standard acrylic. True life, you're familiar with museum glass, which adds quite a bit of money to doing a print, anywhere from generally $100 to $150 to even $200 to put the non-reflective glass. The true life acrylic is non-reflective acrylic. So that's a more expensive acrylic. So this is a very, very high quality material. It's more transparent than glass. It gathers light. It's like a lens, and your print is right up to it. So it's gathering light and putting more light into the print. It's harder than plexiglass, and they also say it contains UV inhibitors. So if you're looking for an acrylic lab, this would be something to look for, that they understand the process a little bit better. Also, the kind of paper that they print on. Now, Peter Look uses Fuji Full Flex. It's a wet process paper. It's a glossy, silver halide, polyester-based paper that has a bit of a pearlescent finish, and it's exposed in a very special way. So it tends to be more expensive. It's exposed by lasers, and it's a wet process. The LumoChrome process, that's what this print was done with, uses transparency infused with iridium. So it's a reflective kind of finish. It's a little bit metallic. When the lights come up, if you want to come up and look at this print, you'll see a little bit of that finish behind it. So it's not really a pearlescent kind of finish, but it has a little bit of reflectivity. And then that's backed with white archival resin paper. Yes.
You mentioned that one of these is non-reflective. Now,
Yes.
The biggest problem I have with all these, once you put something in front of whether it's acrylic or glass or whatever, you're looking more at the reflection than the print. Right. Now, is our acrylic really get over the problem? You don't see any reflection?
Yes. It's museum glass. So if you've seen museum glass, it's the same effect.
So I've read that when you start doing that, though, you lose some of, I guess, the reflective.
Yes, you do. Yeah, you pay a price because there's a fine mesh built into it.
Really good
More lighting, more lighting. There you go.
offset the loss of reflective. Right?
Yes, yes. Yes. So it's a kind of give and take. So I'm explaining acrylics because I was involved with this project with acrylics. But the choices you make in terms of showing your work are actually, you can make, an intelligent, educated choice as to how you want to show your work. The acrylic print vendors, these are 3 labs that I would use in the country. Now, I can't recommend the 2 at the bottom because I've never dealt with them before, but they offer high quality materials. Okay, I had worked with Nevada Art Printers on this project. So now we're going to, any more questions about the prints? Because we're going to go on to something else. Yes, Hal?
Yeah, so just following up on my question, it sounds like, when you're choosing your print, you really have to think of where it's going to be shown. Because if it's in a gallery, you're going to have great light and, minimize reflectivity. If it's in your home or somebody else's home, where probably most of us do, then you're dealing with much lower light situations with a lot of areas that you can't get reflections. So
Yes.
you have to go more with canvas or something without glass in front of these
color. Sure, there are.
and showing it. Yes, Paul.
An observation that I have in using acrylic is one of the main features is the thicker the acrylic material, the more depth of field that you have. So it really allows things in the background to come forward, and it differentiates that distance. It's really quite unique. And I have one hanging in my living room, and I don't get the reflections that I get off of other pieces that have glass or other kinds of prints. So somehow, and maybe it's a spot, I don't know, but I don't have that issue with a lot of reflection off of it.
Paul has said is that Paul has a thicker acrylic coating. You can get the acrylic an 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, and even a 1/2 inch thick. And of course, that acrylic, the thicker it is, the more light it's gathering. But it also provides a greater sense of depth to the photograph. Am I correct, Paul? Yeah. Yeah. So in this project over here at Bay Harbor, this was more of a decor kind of setting the mood. So I used the 1/8 inch acrylic here. It's really not a fine art installation. It's more of a decor setting the mood kind of installation. Okay, now I'm going to go on to the upsizing process. Okay, yeah, all right. What you're doing when you're upsizing is you're taking those each individual pixels and you're generating new pixels from them. So if your individual pixels are not particularly high quality, generating new pixels, you know, if it's not very good at the start, it's not going to be very good at the end. Okay, so basically, I'm advocating for a high quality camera, a good sharp image that's properly exposed. Now, I want you to be aware of computer programs that mix sharpening, contrasting, or denoising with the upsizing. Because if you're using a computer program that does that, you have to run it at the end of your process. But I particularly like the ones that avoid those processes because I like to do my upsizing at the start of the process. Because as you go through working through all these things, it tends to merge the image together and it looks more natural. Okay, now there are some new programs out that will do this sharpening, contrasting. Yes. That's absolutely correct. In your raw file is all the information you need, but you generally process the picture afterwards. You add more color, or you lighten and darken, or those pictures I had smoothed out the waves, you know, that sort of thing. So it has to do with testing. I'll be talking about that. Yes.
When you talk about upsizing, you shouldn't make a distinction between upsizing and enlarging.
That's the same thing. It's actually, the technical title is interpolation. And when you're upsizing.
But when you're enlarging, you don't really increase the pixels by just larger pixels, right?
No, it generates new pixels.
In your computer program.
Yes, yes. And when you downsize, it generates new pixels. It throws them out.
I'm confused if I have a picture that is, 3,000 pixels wide.
Yeah.
And I send it to a photo processor and enlarge, print it at, let's say, 30 inches. Okay, don't I still have 3,000 pixels across that 30 inches?
No. Oh no, they have to enlarge that. Yes.
Okay, they will have pixels.
Yes. Go ahead, Rob.
It's a lot to get into in terms of the weeds, and there are charts out there that really graphically show this, but you could explain the math between dots per inch and pixels. So for instance, if the length of the picture was 3,000 and you have 300 and you're going to print at 300 DPI, the native side without getting more pixels would be 3,000 divided by 300 or 10, whatever that is. Right?
So there's a lot of math involved with the algorithms in doing this. Yeah. So anyway, for processing, I thought somebody would bring up some of this stuff. So anyway, okay, I already had, before this project, considerable experience in doing this. I had talked about up-resing in a number of times and been working with this. So for this project, I tested 3 different programs. A procedure developed by Tony Northrup that I had shared with the camera group here. And I have some sheets on this floating around if anybody wants one. You can also pick that up online. You tested Photo Zoom Pro, and the discussion boards were raving about gigapixel AI. But when we tested them in detail and actually did the enlargements, the super resolution method and the Photo Zoom Pro were about equal. The gigapixel AI did not meet the muster. So I used the Photo Zoom Pro. And this is what the interface looks like. Okay, you can see in the middle circle there with the arrow on it, I would just peck in the side size I wanted and the resolution. And you can see up at the top here how huge the files became. That's barking on 1 gigabyte of files. And this is the portion of this picture right here. And it took 6 to 8 minutes to do most of the enlargements. So there's quite a bit of computer processing power that goes into doing this, but it worked quite well. Mike, have any questions? Okay, well, good. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the project now. 240 pounds was the shipping crate when it arrived in Traverse City. The prints were taped together face to face. This is what the installation looks like. This is before they put in the curtains over at Bay Harbor. That's the triptych. Now, these are the takeaways that I've had from this project. You should always appreciate your work as an artist and understand what you're doing. Have a grasp of that. Your best market is always closest to home. You know, if you're selling pictures, you know, always you try and improve yourself, evaluate, grow your processes, and testing provides the experience for success. Now, let's go back and talk about our cell phone image. What did you think of the cell phone image? It's amazing. Was the 16 by 20 satisfactory for you? Because quality depends on, you know, what your eye is and what your goals are. Yes. Yes, it was. That was ambient light coming in from the right as I was facing the bookcase. You think it's good? It doesn't quite meet my standards because I can see it falling apart just a little bit. But I showed this print to somebody who's looked at, he's a photography instructor. And he showed it to, he's seen thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs. And he said what struck him was the total flattening of the image. It had no sense of depth at all, is what he had said. You know, that's what he had said. So for those of you who do cell phones, at least my humble recommendation, and it's very humble because, you know, your pictures are your pictures, but I would say 11 by 14 would float my boat. So,
Maximum size.
maximum size, yeah, 11 by 14.
Where is it going?
You can see it at the edges of the wording and the things. You can take another look at. But that's with a critical eye. See, it has to do with what's good enough for you.
Did you do any post on that?
Very little, very
No
little.
sharpening or?
No, there was no sharpening on that, yes.
So when you say it loses,
Excuse me, one thing, but it did go through the Photo Zoom Pro. That's how I enlarged it.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
so when you say it loses depth, that's a very, is that only a subjective thing?
it's absolutely subjective, yes.
There's nothing that you could do with all the technical things.
No, it's just how it just compressed it. Take another look at it at the end here,
My
Al.
criticism of the flat criticism is that it's essentially a flat subject and the lighting is very diffuse.
Yes,
So it's a
yes.
flat lighting.
There's no depth to the image.
There's no depth.
No, there's not very much depth at all anyhow.
Yeah, it's only like 10 inches.
What I should have done is taken a picture with the other camera. Well, anyway. Yes,
So you said that one of the shortcomings you saw was a little less sharpness around the edges.
yes.
So you seem to be talking about the lens on a cell phone camera, not having a lot of color. What are some of the other technical differences between a good DSLR, let's say, and a cell phone?
Remember I had talked about the sharpness of the individual pixels? These pixels are extremely small on that 12 megapixel camera. If you're using a higher quality camera, it has higher quality pixels. They tend not to fall apart. Those little photo sites are higher quality. They have better resolution. Even there's a difference between higher quality cameras and how well they resolve the edges. You know, on the little photo sites, there's a lens at the front that gathers the light. There's a lot of extremely technical things that go into producing these digital cameras. And there are variations between them.
So a photo taken with a DSLR will enlarge better than when taking.
Yes, and of course, a camera that has more megapixels will enlarge better than a camera that has less megapixels. Yes,
They're not the same quality.
they're not the same quality. That's exactly it. Yes, oh, just, yes, yeah. There's a difference between the two of them.
So the size of the sensor itself is an important feature, because cell phone is very small.
Yes, that makes a difference. But it's not surprisingly, it's surprising how high quality all our equipment is these days. I remember the early days of digital photography, and things are just so much better now. It's just amazing. We have amazing cameras. So we're kind of splitting hairs on some of this, but I'm trying to try it through this presentation. I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into different ways that you might make choices in your photography and perhaps improve it a little bit. So, does any, yes, yes. Yeah.
And it's being done in Las Vegas. How did you make sure they were going to look and colors that huge?
Okay, how did I make sure the quality was going to be correct? The lab I chose for doing this is I had a little bit of experience with them. We had been out in Las Vegas. Las Vegas really is the center of where they're producing the acrylic prints. So that gave them 1+. Okay, 2+, they used the TrueView and True Life acrylic. Number 3, I had gone through website after website in choosing this. And there's almost universal acclaim for the quality of the work. Talking to them on the phone, 70% of their work is done with professional photographers. So they're used to working with professional photographers. The files that came back were exactly the same as the files I sent them. So I had complete confidence in what I was doing.
So, the whole thing on your monitor, color, I forget what that's called, when you're making sure your colors look like their colors.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's where I'm
Yeah.
totally lost, because I ordered so many prints and then thing that.
Yeah. That's very frustrating. That is very frustrating. And you've spent a fair amount of money doing that. Put in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it has to come back to you. You have to send it to them. That's very, very frustrating. And an example of how frustrating it is, for every trip we take, I produce my own book and I print them myself because I got tired of dealing with the photo book printers, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So the lab becomes quite important. Go ahead,
So
Gretchen.
what do you recommend? Does it change the spider? Does that color balance the monitor?
Well, that'll work.
Okay.
Okay.
Color balance the monitor.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what I'm doing now is I do some because I stand over the shoulder.
There you go.
And I say that color isn't quite right, and I know I'm a blogger, but at least now, when he prints my stuff.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so along with calibrating your monitor using some software or a spider, there's 2 or 3 different people who make that equipment. Some of the better labs will do a test print or a strip for you. So they'll print a representative strip that shows the highs and lows with values or color or whatever you're looking for. They'll send you that, and then you can make a decision about whether that's what you want or not. So,
Also, some labs will send you proofs.
but to me, yeah. they'll
You
send
can do that.
proof.
There are labs that will send you proofs.
Anybody tell me a lab that I can start with that they're happy with? So I'm not just looking in the dark.
Go ahead, Al.
So it took me a long time to, figure out that problem. I'm kind of stubborn. And it turns out, for me, the problem was the kind of room you're looking at, the images on your computer. You really have to look at how much ambient light there is, because I tend to brighten my screen, and every time I send out images, they get too dark. So finally, I said, all right, I know it's not gonna look right to me on my image, but it's gonna look on a monitor, but it'll look better there. And that's, so you have to calibrate right before you put it together.
The light.
Sorry, what was that last part of that comment? That last little section of your comment, what did you say?
I tend to do at least the brightness calibration right before I finalize the print to send it out, make sure it's right. It tends to look dark for me on my monitor because I'm not real good about creating that dark room, doing it all in the dark room. So it took me a long time to learn, unfortunately.
Seems like correct me if I'm wrong, I just read a book. Is the guy's name Shelby?
Yes.
I thought he said you need to be a stop writer or something like that. Can you explain?
I'll give you an easy method to attempt.
This, okay? Take your print as it comes back and compare it right next to your monitor. And you can get the brightness, because you'll know that that's how the print came out, and you adjust from there so that the brightness of your print will match the brightness of your monitor. But you have to be careful with that, because again, your monitor is backlit, your print is room light reflectivity. So you've got a difference there. So it takes some tinkering. So when I printed this book, I didn't have a single page that didn't come out right, because I have enough experience working with my printing process and my monitor that what I see is what I get. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe this is going back to the basics. How does color space overlay on this discussion about the colors?
We're getting pretty deep here, but RGB has a much larger color space than sRGB. If you're going to do
Really do it in RGB, but I don't want to go down that road too much farther. Yes.
Two points on that. So first of all, is that to that point about color space, you need to know what color space of the processor that you are going to is going to use. It's going to differ. And the other thing is that with these calibration devices, that's the main thing that that device does, is it calibrates your monitor to an industry standard. So that what you're using is the same as the monitor the guy is using in the lab. You know, that color space will match. So whether you're using Adobe or sRGB or RGB or another one. Both of those match.
Back to your question about the lab. Another reason why I chose this lab is they only wanted 16-bit TIFF files at 300 DPI, and they will not even give you an invoice until after they've looked at your file. So there was another layer in selecting them. Yes.
We have a question from our online viewers. They're asking, can you give us a bottom line recap? Which media do you recommend for which situation?
Oh, that's a very good question. For exhibiting here, I think any of these would be fine for exhibiting because the lighting is beautiful. If I'm printing for home, I tend to print my prints a little bit lighter because the lighting is not as good. What will win a photo contest here? It's across the board. I mean, we've had everything. Acrylics have won here. Aluminum prints have won here. Paper prints, canvas prints. It really becomes your choice as a photographer as to how you would want to display your work. What I wanted to do with this presentation is to try and give you a little bit of insights into the different media. Now we have lots of different ways of printing pictures, so that as you print your picture, you might think about it a little bit as to the media that you want to use to present your work. So, yes?
Are your notes for this presentation available in a file?
I think it is.
So with Zoom and with Facebook, we have a recording available there. Facebook is transcribed, so
Okay.
you can find it on our website and on our Facebook page.
And I'll be around afterwards if you have any questions.
Thank you for the great comments. It made it wonderful.